Welcome back to the channel. Let's get right into it. So what is a cognitive attitude? A cognitive attitude is the way in which we use a cognitive function. And if you're unfamiliar with what a cognitive function is, I have a video that I will link in the description and throw on a banner or something in one of the top corners. Keep an eye out for that. I recommend starting with that because it's something you need to know in order to understand how the attitudes operate. And it's this combination of our 8 cognitive attitudes and our 8 cognitive functions and the ordering of them that leads to what is called a cognitive stack. I'll throw an example on the screen. Don't worry if you don't totally know what you're looking at. We'll get there. And as an example of how the attitude and the cognitive function interact, everyone has extroverted feeling in their psyche, but one person may be more naturally in tune with it, be easily able to discern and restore harmony between people, whereas someone else may use that same extroverted feeling function, which is about harmony and about kind of the mood of the room and the ethics of things. They may use it in a very critical way, to the point where it kind of sets limits for themselves rather than empowers them in their lives. So what are these 8 attitudes? These 8 attitudes are kind of broken up into 2 sections of 4. Because your first 4 attitudes make up your ego or your conscious self. And then the next 4 make up your, sometimes called the shadow self, or your unconscious. So what are our first 4 functions? Well, the first cognitive attitude is the hero. It's the way of interacting in the world that feels most natural to us. It kind of feels like almost our home in the world. But just like heroes in movies, there's also the element that it can be reckless. The hero function alone doesn't necessarily know when to restrain itself. It typically always thinks it's the hero and it's just go, 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 go. Let's do this. What could go wrong? And this is where the second cognitive attitude can come into play, which is the parent attitude. The parent is, well, like a parent. It's very responsible. It tries to make sense of what is going on, or what we're thinking, or what other people are thinking, depending on which function occupies this attitude. It operates to restrain and support the hero, while also kind of nurturing and protecting our next function, which is the child function, or child attitude, rather. The child attitude or child function, it's very innocent, borderline naive. Like its name implies, it operates with like a childlike curiosity of the world. However, in order for it to really be noticeable in someone and for you to really see someone's child function, the environment they're in needs to have a level of safety. So you'd be more likely to see someone's child function like with their families or friends in an environment where they're comfortable and they're used to, where it's safe to let the child play. They know nothing will happen to it. The fourth cognitive attitude is the inferior or aspirational function. This attitude, whatever function occupies this, it's kind of where our fears exist. So, for example, if someone has extroverted thinking, inferior, it will actually be afraid of what other people are thinking and what other people believe. Or alternatively, if someone has introverted feeling, inferior, they can spend a lot of time being afraid of whether they're a good and moral person. That being said, over the course of someone's life and as they grow and become more psychologically mature, that same function can also become very aspirational. When we get over those fears, the function that occupies this cognitive attitude can become extremely powerful and mature and actually be a gateway to our subconscious and get us closer to self-actualization. And those 4, the hero, the parent, the child, and the inferior or aspirational, those 4 functions make up our ego. And the next 4 functions, these are what are part of our unconscious or our shadow. The first attitude in our unconscious or shadow it's called the Nemesis function. Whatever function is in this, has this attitude, is likely to be a place where we worry. So, for example, if someone were to have extroverted sensing as their nemesis, they're likely to worry about underperforming or worry that they're making other people uncomfortable in some way. Or alternatively, if someone had introverted thinking as their nemesis function, they would worry about whether they're right or wrong. They'd worry about how logical they're being. And a lot of this probably sounds like it's universally applicable. Like, oh, of course, like everyone worries about whether they're right or wrong or being logical. That's what a lot of times we try and tell ourselves. But the fact of the matter is, that's not the case. If you really talk to people, you'll realize that people will face a lot of the similar challenges, but the things we actually worry about and the things we fear can vary wildly between person and person. So that's the Nemesis function. The next attitude in our shadow or unconscious is the critical parent function. According to the book Depth Typology, the guide map to becoming who we are, the critic, and he calls it the witch or the SENEX attitude, but this is what's most responsible for setting limits. It's that voice in our head that says you can't do it, or the feeling of needing things to be in harmony. It's a very limiting cognitive function. Now, as someone matures more, it can go from being kind of hypocritical and limiting to very wise. The second to last attitude in our cognitive stack is the trickster function. It's also sometimes called the polar. This is a really interesting one because this is the part of our psyche that we convince ourselves we're right about and are very, very sure that we're, I guess, correct or justified or on the right path, when in reality, we're very far off. And this is hard to see, but I'll give an example. So I have extroverted feeling trickster. So as far as social norms and ethics, I typically think I'm doing it right. But when you talk to someone else who has higher extroverted feeling in their cognitive stack, it's very apparent where the trickster element comes in. For example, I don't personally have any issue or see anything wrong with like swearing in the workplace. Whereas you talk to someone with very high extroverted feeling and they'll be like, no, like you don't do that. That's not socially acceptable, like period. So that's kind of how the trickster can operate. And then we get to our last attitude in our cognitive stack, and that's known as the demon function. It is by far the most repressed and ignored cognitive function. So someone with introverted sensing as their demon, they'll be highly unaware and unlikely to really care about their own comfort and their own needs, such as sleep or being hungry, because that introverted sensing part of themselves is very lacking. Whereas someone with an introverted thinking demon function, they'd be more likely to look at logical true-false statements and just go, oh, well, it doesn't actually matter if it's true or false. And really, its only redeeming quality is that it gives us something to overcome in our lives. Now, I know this was a lot of information, and in the future, I'd like to make some videos going through each one individually and give more examples with the cognitive functions, but I hope this is enough to get you started. As always, if you have any questions, concerns, comments, please reach out to me. If you enjoy the content, give it a like, subscribe, all that good stuff.